I'm completely original. I don't know what you mean. No one's ever done this before. Hey all you Hillmaniacs, it's Hillmanator, and today I'm going to be doing another Q&A because it's been about 6 months since I did the last one and I just felt like it was time, so let's get on with it. Okay, so the first question is, what's the worst website online? Now, if I were to actually go and search for it, I'm sure I could find it, but it would probably take me forever because there are so many websites. How do you expect me to pick just one? Like, 90% of websites are trash, let's face it. But there are two that stand out in my mind, and those are the two that I attempted to create when I was younger. Now, the first one I tried to create, I was about 11, and I had just found out about Wix. So obviously I was like, yeah, Wix, wahoo! I tried to make it somewhat Torchwood themed, I believe. And it was about aliens and weird mythological things and me, and basically it was just random, as my YouTube channel is now, but probably even more so because I was in the ooh, I'm so random phase of my comedy. Yeah, that was pretty terrible. I used a largely black theme and I believe I had stars in the background. Honestly, I can't really remember that much of it now. The other time I tried to create a website was using coding alone, and this was actually for a school project. And I did pass the project, but the websites that we all created were the most basic things in history. So mine was literally just a plain white sheet with the lyrics for one of Chameleon Circuit's songs on there. I believe it was the chorus of Teenage Rebel specifically. And the image of Chameleon Circuit's logo with their album cover for their first album specifically as well. And that was it. That's all I needed to do to pass that thing. I mean, it was a pain in the backside to code because I had no idea what I was doing, and my teacher for that year wasn't the most helpful, but I passed, so, you know. Those two are probably the worst ones that I've come across in general, but there are definitely worse. Trust me. If you go searching down in like the bottom dark corners of the internet, which I wouldn't recommend because you can find some interesting stuff down there, you can find some very unusual and not good websites. The next question is the most overrated movie. Now, I'm going to get hate for this because the fact that it's overrated means that a lot of people like it, and I don't think it's as deserving of praise as most people do. Now, just to get it out the way, yes, I do like this movie. I think it's a good movie. I would rate it about a 7, maybe a 7.5 on my system, which, as those of you who have watched that video know, means it's pretty good. Like, it's not great, it's not mind-blowing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's good, and I would watch it on TV most of the time if it was on, because I actually do like this film. I just don't think it's as great as everyone makes out. It's Iron Man. The first Iron Man it's a good film, as I said, and Robert Downey Jr. in this film is phenomenal. I still doubt we would find a better Tony Stark, even if we searched in like the entire history of acting. I don't think we could find someone better suited to the role than him. But I don't think it's as great as everyone makes out. Like, yes, it started the MCU, but that was effectively only done in the last 10 seconds of actual film. If we're excluding any other feedback that we might relay onto the first film and just look at the first film on its own, it's definitely a good film, but it's not as great as everyone makes it out to be. And again, that's my opinion. If you think that it deserves all of the praise that it gets, then that's great and more power to you. Next up is worst fictional trope. Again, this is going to be a vaguer answer because I have an awful lot of fictional tropes I could choose from. I could go down the route of the sexy bad boy, or the mid-battle conversations even though everyone is in the middle of a firefight. But instead, what I'm going to go with is the one that I find the most irritating, and it appears everywhere. You can't seemingly escape it, and it annoys me. It's a love triangle. And I'm going to get more into why in future. I'm probably going to do a pedantic pop culture on that, but love triangles are a pain in the backside, and I wish we could just not. Now, the next question is, drumroll please. Oh. So, Katie has asked me who my favourite big sister is. For those of you unaware, Katie is my sister. Subtle there, Kate. I mean, I don't think I would have noticed it was you, you know. It's not like it tells me it's your name who's asking. I'm just going to skip this question for obvious reasons. What's my dream job? Oh, we're getting into the existential questions here. Now of course we get into a Q&A with a university student, we've got to ask him what his dream job is. Now I've got to say, honestly I'm still unsure. I'm considering a lot of options right now. I've got a lot of variables that I could go down, and I don't know what I want to do with my life, which is always reassuring. Hopefully by the end of this 3 years I should know 100% what I am going to be doing. Yeah, right, I will never know what I'm going to be doing. Regardless, as of right now, I don't have a dream job per se, but I feel like that's a bit of a cheat answer, so I'm going to give you some of the dreams jobs that I've had when I was younger. Now, one of my relations used to always say that they wanted to be a bottle when they grow up, which, as a very young child, I wanted something just as abstract, so I decided I would be a lamppost. That was a fun job that I wanted to have. Then I wanted to be a lollipop man, the man who goes in the middle of the street and holds out that sign to stop all the cars, because how authoritative and strong, and I can, you know, stand there and be like, no, you shall not pass. But that died out quickly. Then I wanted to be an astronaut. I like space. I like physics. I'm not studying it anymore, and I didn't study at A level, but that was purely because they studied physics on too wide a basis, and I'm very interested in very niche and specific areas of physics. But I do enjoy learning about space and all of that stuff, so I thought maybe an astronaut would be a cool job to have. Then I remembered that A, they don't really send people to space anymore, and B, I haven't really had any relevant experience on roller coasters, and the only time I've been on a roller coaster I screamed my head off. Then again, that time I was on a roller coaster was years ago now. I was still like under 10, so probably be able to do it nowadays. But yeah, basically when I decided that I didn't want to be an astronaut was largely because of roller coasters. Then I went on to wanting to be an actor, and I still kind of like acting and would consider pursuing it, but it's difficult to get into that industry. It's very hard because there's so much competition, and it's very, very difficult to even find out about acting gigs, let alone try and compete for them. Plus, I'm not exactly built in the same way that most actors are, am I? Let's face it. So that was my last dream job, and then ever since then I haven't really had one. I've kind of just been considering my options and going with the flow for now. Next up, I've got my favourite Marvel movie up to and including Avengers Endgame. Now, it depends how you define favourite. If you're defining the best Marvel movie, see, I don't know about which one is the best anymore. The 5 best of Marvel films in my opinion is Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, the first Avengers film, Avengers Assemble as it's called in the UK, and Captain America Winter Soldier, and then Captain America Civil War. Of course, I love all Marvel films. I am known as the king of the nerds by some of the people at my school because I enjoy a lot of nerdy stuff. I do enjoy all of the Marvel films, but I don't necessarily have a favourite in terms of which one I think is best. In terms of which one I enjoy watching the most, controversial opinion here, Age of Ultron. I think it might have something to do with the fact that I love the concept of AI gone rogue and all of that comes with it, and also I think that some of the stuff that they do in it is a lot funnier than the first Avengers movie, and it's all a lot more intense in my opinion, because Loki only seeks to rule the world, Ultron aims to destroy it. There's some interesting cinematography at points, and I don't know, I just really enjoyed the second Avengers film. In terms of my favourite Marvel movie as of right now, assuming that we're only counting the MCU, then it would be Avengers Age of Ultron. Because technically you just said Marvel movie, not MCU film, but let's face it, when most people say Marvel movie, they mean the MCU. We've got another MCU related question. Where do you think the MCU will go now after Endgame? Well, that's an interesting question. I've got a couple of ideas as to where it could go. Personally, I think that they're going to relate in X-Men and Fantastic Four quite quickly in Phase 4, and then maybe build up to Galactus as the next big villain. But I'd quite like for them to go for smaller stories now. I think it'd be good for them to, you know, scale it back a bit, because we've just had, you know, Thanos and, you know, the end of the world. Well, the universe actually. But I think it'd be good for them to go with more personal stories for right now, just so that we can get reinvested into the characters. Of course, there's also the opportunity to do Secret Wars, which I've heard they might be doing, which could be fun. That's another comic event that has occurred twice now, I believe. For those of you who don't know, there's plenty of videos about it on YouTube, you can look into that. I think it's possible that they could use Wanda to bring in the mutants, a la House of M, except in reverse. That could work, I guess. Or they might go with, considering what they've revealed in the newest Spider-Man trailer, they might just bring them over from another universe. That's also possible. I think eventually we are going to get an Avengers vs X-Men movie. I'm pretty sure that's clear, because if you're going to bring in the X-Men, you have to do an Avengers vs X-Men, let's face it. And I'd quite like for them to lead up to Dormammu, because I know we didn't see that much of him in Doctor Strange, but in the comics, Dormammu is way more powerful than he is in the film that we saw him in. We really didn't get a sense of how powerful he is, but in the comics he is considered to be one of, if not the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. He has been stated by Doctor Strange before to be so insanely powerful that if he actually ever did invade the Marvel Universe, nothing could stop him. Which, considering they have in the Marvel Universe the Infinity Stones and the Ultimate Nullifier, which can kill anything, I'd say Dormammu's pretty powerful. He is effectively a multiversal being, so he has significant abilities, and I'd quite like for them to build up and show more of Dormammu and have him be the next big villain instead of Galactus. Next up we have, what are my thoughts on the new Batman? Well, that news has only just come out recently. For those of you who aren't aware, Robert Pattinson has been cast as the latest Batman in the DC movies. I believe it's going to be in The Batman, as far as I'm aware, which I've heard also is going to have Catwoman and Penguin in. Last time I've seen them together would be Batman Returns, so I don't think they're remaking Batman Returns, but it could be interesting. As far as Robert Pattinson goes, it's a complicated thing, because I've only actually seen him in Twilight, and he was one of the better parts of Twilight, but he was still in Twilight, so I'm not a fan of those books or that film series, to be honest, and he didn't do all that great in it. But equally, I've heard that apparently his last couple of films have been quite good, so nervous anticipation, I would say. That's how I'm feeling about it. I'm hoping it's good. I really want it to be good, but I have no clue how it's going to turn out. Personally, I'm more nervous about the upcoming Batwoman series. I think the trailer looks very interesting, and Kate Kane is a very good character to choose to adapt. I really like what I am seeing in general, but then equally the CW do have a tendency of mucking about a bit with characters, and I'm just really hoping that they don't do it with Kate Kane. Onwards, the next question is still about superheroes. Well, hey. Apparently this is the theme of the video. My next one is The Dark Knight still the best superhero film? See, it's interesting because I would argue that The Dark Knight has been battling another film for the title of best superhero film since before it even came out. And that film is Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is cinema gold. It is effectively what The Dark Knight is in dark and gritty. Spider-Man 2 is in light-hearted and fun. Spider-Man 2 is a great movie. Its cinematography is beautiful, the acting is brilliant, the editing is... Literally, Spider-Man 2 and The Dark Knight I find are on the same level of film, but they just do it in completely different ways. So those two, in my opinion, have been the top two movies in the superhero genre for a long time. Nowadays they face a lot of competition. I would say Logan is certainly up there on around that level, maybe a little bit lower, but still very, very good. MCU films that I mentioned earlier are also up there. Those top 5 are all very strong films. I wouldn't necessarily say that any of them are better than The Dark Knight and Spider-Man 2. I think those two films are the pinnacle of superhero movies. They're getting close, and it's entirely possible that they could make a better film anytime. Also, the original Batman from the 1989 movie and the original Superman films with Christopher Reeve were all really brilliant, and those are up there as well. Apologies for the slight angle change. My camera needed to restart recording because it can only record so much in one go. Anyway, and I've rambled a lot. I've gone on many a tangent, so that's why I've had to cut about with this. The next question is yes. Just the word yes is the question, so I'm going to ignore that one. Then, we've got 2 questions from a fellow uni-tuber, and the next one... How did I manage to close my phone? The next one is, what's my favourite movie? Well, personally I find that quite an easy question to answer. The Lord of the Rings Return of the King Extended Edition. I love the Lord of the Rings franchise, including the books, the other books that are related to it, like the Silmarillion, the Unfinished Tales. I'm waiting to read Beren and Luthien. I think that's going to be really good. But I love everything to do with Middle-earth and the world that Tolkien created, and I feel like the Lord of the Rings films did a really great job of adapting them for the most part, so I love them. And then on top of that, the amount of practical work that they did in these original Lord of the Rings films rather than in The Hobbit, where they relied heavily on CGI, and all of the camera trickery that they did. These films are beautifully shot, they are beautifully edited. The amount of skill that goes into creating Gollum is insane. Gollum was way ahead of his time. The themes of the Lord of the Rings franchise are beautiful, and the way that everything is done in this film is just amazing. And I know it gets a lot of complaints for its endless endings, but personally I felt like that was necessary. I mean, for me, I watched the extended editions, as I've said earlier, and that essentially means that if I just want to watch the Lord of the Rings films, it's going to take me 12 hours. 12. By the time you're finished through those 12 hours, you need those endings so that everything gets wrapped up. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel right. So I'll admit, if you just watch the last bits of Lord of the Rings on their own, then it seems really, really weird. But if you actually go back and watch all 3 films immediately one after the other, then it kind of becomes clear why they had so many endings. So yes, Return of the King is still my favourite film, despite the fact that it came out in 2003. And the last question I have for today is, what is my favourite thing about uni? Oof. Well, I want to go with the fact that I'm able to cook for myself, the library, the lecturers who were really helpful, the ease of getting academic assistance, the ease of just moving around campus, how beautiful the campus is. There's so many different options of things that I could go for, but really there's only one thing that I can say. The people I have met at this university have been brilliant. A lot of you will be aware that I was bullied back at high school, and I've probably got some personal issues with that still. So when I first came over to uni, I was meeting all of these new people, and I was immediately worried that I was going to do something and mess up. And everyone was really reassuring and really nice to me, and honestly I haven't really had an argument with anyone, which is insane. Everyone has been polite and courteous when dealing with each other, as far as I'm aware, at least in my experience. Everyone has been polite to me. I've made so many good friends here, and if the rumours are true, then they will be friends for life, hopefully. But yeah, the people, in my opinion, are definitely the best, because it's not even just the people that you're friends with. Literally, I've ran into people just randomly and had a 2-minute conversation with them, and they've been some of the most interesting people that I've ever met. The people that I've met during my university experience that I haven't actually hung out with ever, but I've just kind of like chatted with briefly. I've talked to people in lectures, like not during the lecture obviously because I'm taking notes in that time, but before the lecture starts, during breaks in lectures and after the lectures, and they can turn out to be some of the most fascinating people that you ever meet. And you never would have known if you hadn't have struck up the conversation. So yeah, I would say that just the people that I've met have been great. And even when I've run into people who are absolutely hammered, they've been really polite and courteous to me. And even more so sometimes than when they aren't. Even when people are busy and they're off, let's say they're going on a night out and, you know, you just run into them, you can have a really good conversation with someone. Everyone I've met here has been really great, and that's why the best thing about university for me is the people, and also why I can't really picture myself going anywhere else. Anyway, that was my video about my Q&A. I hope that you guys feel satisfied with my answers and that you've enjoyed yourself. And thank you for no one assassinating me over what I said about Iron Man. That would have been unfortunate. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I certainly did. Okay, thanks for watching all. I shall catch you next time.